For many years, humans lived quietly among the stars, members of the Galactic Union but never truly part of its inner circle. They followed the laws, respected the treaties, and kept to themselves on their planets and trade routes. The other alien races looked at them with mixed feelings, some with mild curiosity, some with pity, and some with quiet laughter behind closed doors. Humans were polite, always using calm words and careful diplomacy. They didn't show off their weapons, they didn't compete for territory, and they didn't try to challenge anyone. They were seen as soft, too peaceful to be taken seriously. The Union called them reliable. But deep down, most species thought humans were weak. And humans never argued. They let others think what they wanted. They observed. They learned. And they waited. The galaxy was a loud place. Empires rose and fell. Powerful species boasted about their fleets and technology, and conflicts broke out now and then, small wars, minor invasions, political tensions. But humans never joined the noise. Instead, they quietly built trade relations, studied science, and watched everything. They helped others, gave medical aid, rebuilt broken colonies, and always followed the rules. Even when insulted or treated unfairly, they responded with patience. Some thought it was because humans had no power to fight back. Others believed it was just in their nature to be peaceful. But the truth was something no one had seen yet. Humans had chosen silence, not because they were weak, but because they were waiting. On the far edge of the galaxy, a small human outpost named Jericho Station worked quietly, handling communications and research for distant colonies. It wasn't a military base, nor was it important enough to draw attention. But it had families living there, scientists, engineers, and young cadets training in low-risk environments. Life was peaceful, and most of the crew thought the galaxy had finally accepted them. Then, one day, during a joint diplomatic event, a strange signal was intercepted. It was traced back to a hidden satellite not registered with the Galactic Union. Within hours, that satellite released a wave of interference, disabling the station's defenses. Just minutes later, a reactor overload caused by what appeared to be a well-planned systems hack ripped through Jericho Station. It wasn't an attack with missiles or weapons. It was quiet, surgical, and deadly. Over 300 humans died instantly. The Union sent a short message of apology. They called it a tragic accident and promised an investigation. But weeks passed, and no real answers came. Some members of the council even hinted that the humans themselves had been careless. No blame was given to any other race. No suspects were named. The matter was closed quietly, as if human lives didn't matter much. The human ambassador attended the memorial in silence. No anger, no speeches, no threats, just a cold, deep silence that spread across every human colony like a shadow. Across the galaxy, human ships began to return to Earth. Trade agreements were quietly canceled. Scientific teams packed up and left research stations. Human embassies began to close one by one. No one made public announcements. There were no news headlines, no bold warnings. Only silence. It was as if a storm was building behind calm skies. Many alien leaders shrugged it off. They assumed humans were just mourning and would return to normal soon. But a few who had worked closely with humans before felt something different in the air. Among them was T-Rel, a young diplomat from the Valari species. He had always admired the way humans handled themselves with quiet confidence. Now, he sensed that same calmness, but it was heavier, like the stillness before something massive breaks loose. T-Rel requested access to old human records from the early years of their entry into the Union. He found something strange. There were files marked restricted by Earth Command, sealed with codes that none of the Union's translation systems could fully decode. He also found references to old human projects that had never been shared, deep space prototypes, experimental defense systems, and exploration logs that reached far beyond known Union space. One entry stood out to him, written by human scientists decades ago. "We show what we must, and we hide what they don't need to know. Our strength is not in our weapons, but in our choice not to use them." Trell read it again and again, and something in him began to feel unsettled. Back on Earth, high-level human officials met behind closed doors. They didn't scream or shout. They didn't demand revenge. But they all agreed on one thing: it was time to stop pretending. They had been patient long enough. The galaxy had mistaken their silence for weakness. The tragedy at Jericho Station wasn't just a wake-up call, it was a decision point. If they stayed quiet now, more would follow. More accidents, more lost lives, more disrespect. The humans had always believed in restraint. But now, restraint was being punished. So, they made a new decision: not to attack, not to rage, but to remove the mask they had worn for too long. They would no longer hide their capabilities, their technology, or their history. They would no longer play by the rules set by others who saw them as small. The gloves were coming off, not for revenge, but for truth. A signal was sent out from Earth Command, encrypted in an ancient code known only to humans. It was short, clear, and direct. It read, "Protocol shift, silence ends." The message wasn't picked up by most Union systems, but for those who did intercept it, it caused confusion and fear. The meaning was unknown, but the tone was unmistakable. Something had changed. And far away, in the dark corners of deep space, strange new human vessels began to move quiet, fast, and unlike anything the Union had ever seen. They didn't carry flags. They didn't answer hails. They just moved like shadows across the stars. TRL stood by the large window of his station, watching human transports disappear from the docking ports. He whispered to himself, they were never weak. They were just waiting. And in that moment, he realized what many others had not: the real question wasn't why the humans had stayed quiet for so long. The real question was, what would happen now that they had stopped? The quiet that followed the sudden shift in human behavior did not last long. At first, the galaxy hardly noticed the subtle changes: the disappearance of small human cargo ships from usual trade routes, the sudden halt of communications from distant colonies, the closing of several embassies that no one had expected to shut down so quickly. Many species thought it was just another cycle of change, a temporary pause before humans returned to their peaceful ways. But then strange signals began to surface. They were faint at first, encrypted bursts of data sent in unknown patterns, picked up only by the most sensitive listening posts in deep space. These signals baffled the best codebreakers of the Galactic Union, who worked day and night trying to understand their meaning. Trell, the Valari diplomat, was among the few who realized these transmissions were not random. They carried a hidden message, a warning, or perhaps a challenge, though no one could say for sure. The signals came from beyond known space, places humans rarely traveled before, and their technology used frequencies that no other race had seen. Soon, reports arrived that some human ships had vanished from the regular traffic channels altogether. Ships that were supposed to be transporting goods or scientists, the far-off colonies stopped answering calls. Union patrols were sent to investigate, but when they approached, they found empty space where ships once were. The mystery deepened when fleets sent to follow these lost ships returned with no new information, as if the vessels had slipped into shadows beyond detection. At the same time, rumors began to spread quietly among intelligence circles that Earth was recalling many of its citizens back home. The trade routes that once connected distant colonies to human worlds began to close. No official statements were made, but the mood across the galaxy grew tense. The creatures who had unimportant. Now, they were demanding respect and attention. The galaxy's powers were forced to reconsider their assumptions about humans. For the first time, many began to wonder if humans had been the most powerful race all along, hiding their strength behind a calm exterior. Meanwhile, ordinary citizens on many planets experienced the change in their own way. Markets slowed as rumors of war spread. The humans' sudden assertiveness had broken the fragile peace that had lasted for generations, replacing it with fear and suspicion. Trell, working closely with human diplomats, tried to mediate. He knew that misunderstanding could lead to destruction. Yet, every conversation with human officials ended with the same message: they would defend themselves, no matter the cost. The galaxy had misjudged them for too long, and now the consequences were unfolding. In the deep reaches of space, new human ships appeared: stealthy vessels capable of moving at incredible speeds. They executed precise missions, disabling enemy fleets without warning or explanation. These operations were surgical and efficient, leaving no room for retaliation. The message was clear: humans were no longer victims, but powerful players in galactic politics. As the sky changed, alliances shifted. Some species sought to join humans, seeing the advantage of their new strength. Others prepared to resist, gathering fleets and weapons in anticipation of conflict. The Galactic Union was under pressure to act, but divisions among its members made decisions difficult. Trull realized that this was just the beginning. The quiet years were over, and a new era had arrived, one where silence was replaced by action, where patience had turned into resolve. The galaxy could no longer ignore humans, and the consequences of that realization were only just starting to unfold. The day the Council fell silent was a day no one in the galaxy would ever forget. It began as an ordinary session, with leaders from all the major species gathered in the Grand Hall of the Galactic Union, trying to find solutions for the rising tension caused by the humans' sudden assertiveness. Voices were loud, emotions were high, and no one could agree on how to deal with the quiet ones who had now revealed their true power. Some called for peace, others demanded immediate action, and many feared that any wrong move would lead to war that no one could control. But in the middle of heated debate, something happened that shocked everyone. Suddenly, all communications across the galaxy went dead. Not just the council chamber, but every planet, every fleet, every station was cut off at the same moment. The screens went black, the airwaves fell silent, and panic spread like wildfire. Leaders tried to speak, but no sound came from the communication devices. For the first time in galactic history, the entire Union was plunged into a silence deeper than any before. Trull, who was present in the council chamber, felt a chill run down his spine as he looked around the faces of other delegates. Some showed confusion, others fear, but all shared a silent understanding that this was no accident. The silence was a message clear and terrifying. Soon, whispers began to spread that the humans had done this. Their powerful ships, capable of blocking all signals, had cut off the galaxy's ability to talk and plan. No one knew exactly where these ships were, but they were close enough to control the flow of information, isolating the Council and its members from their forces and allies. The realization that the humans could cripple the entire Union's communication left many leaders paralyzed with fear. How could they respond if they could not even speak to each other? Meanwhile, on many worlds, people stared at their screens and radios in disbelief, helpless to know what was happening or what to expect next. Markets closed, flights were canceled, and soldiers waited for orders that never came. The galaxy was frozen in suspense, waiting for the next move from the quiet ones who had finally taken off their gloves. Within hours, secret messages began to leak through back channels, suggesting that the humans were not interested in destruction, at least not yet. Instead, they wanted to show their strength, to prove that the era of ignoring humans was over. Trull, desperate to understand, used his contacts within human ranks to gather information. He learned that Earth's leaders wanted the galaxy to listen to respect humans as equals or more. The silence was a test, a warning that humans could control the very lifeblood of galactic communication and use it to their advantage if pushed. But this new power was also a heavy burden. On Earth, debates raged between those who wanted to push harder and those who feared that too much force might lead to all-out war. The human command knew they had the advantage, but they were cautious. They wanted change, not chaos. Meanwhile, as the silence continued, the galaxy grew restless. Secret meetings were held in shadows, and alliances shifted quickly. Some species saw the humans as protectors who could bring order, while others feared them as conquerors who would not stop until they ruled all. The Council, unable to act or even communicate, became a symbol of weakness, and many began to question whether the Union could survive in its current form. The silence was broken only after several tense days, when humans finally sent a clear message. They would restore communications, but only if their demands were taken seriously. They wanted recognition, respect, and an end to the insults and attacks humans had suffered for centuries. This message was broadcast across every planet, a direct and unmistakable signal that the humans were no longer to be ignored or underestimated. The day the Council fell silent was a turning point. The galaxy realized that humans were not just participants in the cosmic dance, they were a force to be reckoned with, a power that had grown quietly but now demanded its place among the stars. The question was no longer if the humans would act, but how the galaxy would respond to a future changed by their strength and resolve. The galaxy held its breath as a new order began to rise from the ashes of silence and fear, an order forged by the humans who had finally stepped into the light with a force no one could deny or ignore. After the day the council fell silent, everything changed. The great halls that once buzzed with endless debates and political games were now filled with whispers of uncertainty and cautious respect. Humans no longer hid behind diplomatic words or quiet patience. They declared their presence clearly and without apology. Their fleets, once few and scattered, grew quickly in number and strength, equipped with technology that seemed both familiar and terrifyingly advanced. The slow creep of fear that had spread across the galaxy turned into a determined realization. The era of human weakness was over. Trell watched this transformation with a mixture of awe and dread. He had spent years studying the humans, believing they were just another species struggling to find their place. But now, it was clear that humans were something else, something unpredictable and powerful. They were reshaping the galaxy's future, not by destruction alone, but by demanding respect and rewriting the rules of power. The old alliances that had kept peace for centuries began to fracture. Some species, eager to maintain their own influence, sought to ally with humans, hoping to share in the new power and avoid destruction. Others resisted fiercely, unwilling to accept a future where humans ruled the balance. Skirmishes broke out on distant planets, small but sharp battles that tested new tactics and weapons. Yet, the humans avoided unnecessary bloodshed, showing that their strength was not just in firepower, but in strategy and will. At the heart of this new order was a message that echoed through every corner of the galaxy. Humans would no longer be victims or ignored. They demanded fair treatment, security, and a voice in every decision that shaped the stars. This was a challenge that many found difficult to accept, but none could deny its reality. Trell found himself caught between worlds, trying to understand where his loyalties should lie. He admired the humans' courage and resolve, but feared the cost of their rise. The galaxy was fragile, and a single spark could set off a war that no one wanted, but all would suffer. Yet, as he spoke with leaders and soldiers from many species, it became clear that fear was turning into a new kind of respect. Humans had changed the rules, and survival now meant adapting to this new order. The Galactic Union, once a symbol of unity, was forced to change or face collapse. New councils formed, with humans as equal partners or leaders, bringing fresh ideas and fierce determination. The old ways of hiding behind bureaucracy were replaced with action and clear goals. Peace was not guaranteed, but at least the future was now open to negotiation. Meanwhile, ordinary beings across the galaxy felt the change deeply. Markets opened with new goods and technologies, ideas spread faster, and hope mixed with caution in the hearts of many. The humans' rise had broken the silence, and with it came both opportunity and risk. No one could predict how this new order would last or what battles lay ahead, but one thing was certain: the galaxy would never be the same again. The Quiet Ones had taken off their gloves, and with that bold step, they had rewritten the story of the stars. As Tyrell looked up at the changing skies, filled with ships both old and new, he knew that the galaxy was entering a chapter unlike any before, a chapter where power, courage, and the will to change would decide the fate of all. The new order had begun, and with it came a future both uncertain and full of promise, where the strongest would survive and the silent ones would finally be heard.